if we don't try to slow it down. And that is a sobering statistic. It is a statistic that reaches deep into each of our lives, whether we're dealing with it right now or we will deal with it soon. So we're going to talk about why that is so important. But beyond that, I want to provide you new information and wonderful strategies that you and your friends can use to master your muscle. Let me begin by reintroducing to you the idea that inflammation is a worldwide phenomenon. Inflammation, especially the chronic ongoing inflammation, is a global problem. Research tells us that over 50% of all adults worldwide already have one or many pro-inflammatory markers in their bodies. Beyond that, over 60% of all the adults on the planet are eating a pro-inflammatory diet. So we as a society want to learn about inflammation. We want to understand what it's doing to us. But more importantly, we want to clearly know how we can reduce inflammation to obtain better metabolic health. Now, the worries that we have about inflammation are justified. Because if you look at this graph here, you'll see that inflammation is associated with many of the global health problems that we deal with. Now, keep in mind, short-term acute inflammation is good. It is essential. It allows us to overcome disease, especially when you consider infections or illness or injuries. But the inflammation we're talking about here is the long-term, long-lasting inflammation. You can see that there's cardiovascular diseases. In this view right here, you'll see there are digestive system issues, especially the metabolic disorders you know all too well. There are neurological problems, kidney and blood diseases, even cancer. All of these are either caused by or made worse by inflammation. And that was very clear when you look at one area that we have some time to talk about today in terms of your muscle loss specifically. Research is increasingly showing us that inflammation provides a link between your aging and muscle loss. That was clear in a study that was published just a few years ago right here in Korea. Locally in Seoul at the National University School of Medicine, researchers discovered that older Korean adults that had higher muscle mass actually slowed down the rate that they biologically aged. They were healthy longer, they looked younger, and they enjoyed their lives better. The researchers also found that there was a clear link to inflammation. Ongoing inflammation was implicated as one of the causes for muscle loss over time. The main conclusion is that the higher the inflammation you experience, the harder it will be to grow and maintain your muscle. And that's really where our focus needs to be. Let's begin with some general terms first off so we're all aware of the main concepts. Muscle mass refers to the size and the strength of all of your skeletal muscle. That is the voluntary muscle that you use to lift things, to move things, to play with grandchildren, to do all of your daily activities. It's called skeletal muscle because the muscle attaches to your skeleton, and when it contracts, it moves bones in a voluntary way. The research shows us that on average, each of our bodies is made up of about 40% of this type of muscle. Of course, that varies based on our age and our fitness. So when we want to maintain muscle, we need to be very aware of the requirements. When you maintain your muscle mass, the powerhouse of your body, you need to make sure that there are appropriate amounts of fuels, nutrients, and importantly, amino acids. You may have heard of amino acids before. These are the small molecules that your cells will attach to each other to build long and strong proteins. That's essential. At the same time, your body is constantly recycling and repairing your muscle fibers on an almost daily basis. So in that period, you'll also shed or release amino acids in the process of recovery. So there's this really healthy balance between building and breaking down that allows your muscle mass to persist. Now, why does muscle mass matter? Muscle mass is important for sure in terms of your individual muscle cells. We want them to be healthy so we can get out of bed, we can kick a soccer ball or do our work. We want that for a long period of time. But beyond simple muscle behavior, there are other areas that you could benefit when you have adequate amounts of muscle mass. Let me mention just a few. The first one is a metabolic boost. The more muscle mass you have, the more calories you'll burn, even while you're sitting still or resting. That's called your resting metabolic rate. Science tells us that you can have 5 to 10% higher resting metabolic rate with strength gains. Another area is your bone health. When muscles move, they grab onto bones and they move them, and in the process make them stronger, denser, and healthier. In fact, you'll delay what may be an eventual outcome in terms of osteoporosis. Some research shows that the bones of active, healthy people are 15% stronger than those that are sedentary or inactive. Here's an idea. Muscle mass also helps with your mobility and your balance. Especially in your older years, the wobbles and the falls can be prevented, by and large, with adequate muscle mass. There are benefits all over the body, but I'll end with this one. There's increasingly a connection between muscle mass maintenance and your mental health. You can have greater mental acuity with the development of your muscle. Here's how it works. When you exercise your muscle or you move your muscle, your brain releases small feel-good molecules called endorphins. They travel everywhere. They give you confidence, vitality, energy, and focus, and they help with your mind. Research shows that these endorphins, triggered by movement, are helpful in restoring good mood as well as peace in your life. Now, of course, as you move along, unfortunately, as we age, the same benefit that comes from enhanced muscle mass tends to wane or decrease. In this case, we're not getting enough of the fuels that we need. Again, amino acids are the building blocks, and when you don't have enough, you'll have reduced protein synthesis in your muscle. The other area of the equation that is also impacted by age is we have greater protein breakdown. And in that case, while you break down your muscles, more of those nutrients, amino acids, and other items are shed from the muscle. The end result of too few inputs, too much output, is a smaller muscle mass over time. Now, eventually, you might reach into an area known as sarcopenia if you continue down this path. Sarcopenia is the technical scientific term for age-related muscle loss. It usually starts around 30 years of age, accelerates by the time you're 50, and you can see the trend downward. This happens because we experience hormonal changes in both men and women. We have less physical activity, generally speaking, but importantly, we also are not getting enough protein in our diet. In fact, 1 out of every 3 adults over the age of 60 are not getting enough protein. Beyond the sedentary view that you see in this picture, I'm going to show you some ways in which you can build more protein early in life, but also slow the decline. Maintain muscle mass at a better rate than would be without those strategies. So let's look at some strategies. Are you guys ready for that? There are 3 general classifications of strategies that help. The first one is called movement. Movement of any kind will be wonderful. Some of you might decide to do resistance training, small weights, or exercise bands 2 or 3 times a week. Others might decide to do body weight type exercise. That could include brisk walking, squats, or lunges. Movement of any kind matters. You don't need to decide which is best for you. Just find what works and do it consistently. The moving of your muscles long term will provide the necessary triggers for muscle synthesis. Another category of strategy is related to sleep quality and your lifestyle. If you can obtain up to 7 hours or more sleep per night and do a little better job of managing your stress, you provide an environment that's conducive to muscle growth. Remember, sleep is not just about rest. It's a prime time event for muscle renewal and repair. I'm sure you're all getting excited to hear from Dr. Benjamin Bickman in a few minutes. He's going to take the stage next and give you some timely advice and instruction about how to address better sleep, among other things. So that's coming up. On the stress front, if you experience more stress, you release a stress hormone called cortisol. I don't know if you've heard of this before, but cortisol, the stress hormone, also decreases your muscle mass. So let's focus on our stress levels, use mindfulness, yoga, or any other approach that will help you. The main category, though, that I'll look at together with you now is nutrition. Protein in your diet provides the fuel that you need. I promise you that as you get older, you need protein in abundance and you need convenience. Do you like that? Convenience and abundance? That's great. Here is a study conducted at the same university I talked about a bit ago. This was done at the National University School of Medicine, and researchers in this case found that older Korean adults, especially those that are advanced in their age, had less muscle mass and more mobility problems. Interestingly, those two things, muscle mass loss and mobility issues, often happen together with advancing age, not separately. Their main conclusion, and this is key, the main conclusion is that they assert that older adults are not getting enough protein in their diet. And that's helpful. Right, this research, plus the research from many all over the world, are now fully implicating nutrition as one of the central aspects of muscle renewal. Remember, when you're building muscle, you need to maintain balance between the building of muscle and the breakdown of muscle. Let me share with you 2 new terms that will help you understand both parts of that equation. When you build things, that's called anabolism, or an anabolic reaction builds or expands things. If you break things down, that's called catabolism, or catabolic networks destroy or break things down. In English, the word meta means average or middle. Thus, if you look at the extremes, what you build and what you destroy, and find the average, that is your metabolism or metabolism. Metabolism is a general term. It's used well to describe overall health. But what it really is measuring is the totality of what you build versus what you break down. The unfortunate thing is, as we age, we kind of favor one part of that equation. Our meta, the middle average build-up and breakdown, shifts. And in fact, we become what's called anabolically resistant. Of course, this is related to age, but it also is triggered or made worse by inactivity, poor diet, insulin resistance that leads to diabetes and weight gain. Insulin resistance is related to anabolic resistance in the sense that you are no longer able to build things that you once were able to do well early in life. Remember, anabolic means to build up or break down. If we can't do that as well, we won't build the proteins we need, and we'll break those down that we already have, making our muscles, in the process, smaller. There are ways in which you can overcome or meet head-on this issue of being anabolically resistant. And one of the best strategies that I've come across is this new product that you're learning about called Stronghold. Stronghold is a muscle support supplement that is specially designed to help you increase lean muscle mass, elevate your strength, and also provide endurance. When I think about Stronghold, I fondly think about three main components that are built into the product that address a lot of the problems we've already talked about. These three items are very helpful. They work much better together than they do separately. The first item is that Stronghold has a superior type of whey protein, rich in amino acids. Those amino acids, remember, are very helpful on the front end. They feed the muscle the necessary tools to build protein. In fact, research with Stronghold's unique type of whey protein shows that muscles have access to about 2 times the amino acids compared to other protein products. And more amino acids entering into the cell equates to more muscle protein synthesis. In fact, almost 50% more muscle protein is possible with this type of protein. In addition to that, the second thing is very unique about this product. In a singular product, you have the amino acids, but you also enjoy a specific amino acid called leucine. Leucine is an essential amino acid you cannot make on your own. And what leucine does is it acts on the front end to encourage anabolic growth. In fact, it is one of the strongest anabolic signals we know of. It requires, or rather you require, leucine to begin synthesis. Together with that is a molecule called hydroxymethylbutyrate, or HMB. In fact, HMB is a byproduct of leucine. You will make some, but you don't make enough. Supplementation is helpful. When these two work together, HMB holds hands with leucine and triggers, of course, anabolic growth, but it also is very helpful in tapping the brakes and stopping breakdown. It is anti-catabolic in nature. Now, a careful person, when you look at ingredients of a product, may appropriately ask the question, what is it really doing to the cell? It's often very helpful to look deep into the cell to find change. Because I believe that at the molecular level and the cellular level, that's where you need to start the process. So let's do it. If you look at this cell carefully, you'll uncover a protein called mTOR. That might be new for most of us. The molecule called mTOR is the master switch. It is a regulator of your global muscle production machine. If you activate mTOR, all the other genes will fall in line and you'll develop new muscle. Leucine and hydroxymethylbutyrate, or HMB, work together and directly activate mTOR, while at the same time growing protein and preventing breakdown. The third item that I'll mention is called creatine. Have you heard of creatine before? Creatine is a molecule that is very dynamic. We've known for decades that it has a role in muscle health, but increasingly it's also shown to have global benefits throughout the body. Let me take a sidestep and introduce to you some ideas about energy that your cell uses. Any cell that is going to do some work, whether it's dividing or moving or making something, anything a cell does requires energy. And the spendable form of energy that they prefer is ATP, or adenosine triphosphate. You can see on this picture that ATP has a big adenosine molecule, but also 3 small phosphate groups attached to the side. So let's imagine you're a cell, you're a muscle cell, or a liver cell, or any type of cell that needs to do work. You can use water, which is available to you, and that water will break the bond of that last phosphate group, and when that P moves away, there's a puff of energy that you can use to do your work. This is happening all the time. It's happening right now in your bodies. All of your cells that are working are breaking down ATP to generate the energy they need. Now let's come back to creatine. Creatine is delivered in Stronghold in usable amounts throughout the body. But when creatine is entering into the muscle cell, it is almost immediately converted into phosphocreatine. You can see it down here at the bottom. Phosphocreatine is a creatine that has an extra phosphate ready to share. That phosphate can very quickly recharge the energy in your muscle cells, especially when you are doing endurance intensity exercise, and provide an immediate energy boost. That will help your muscles for sure. But let's not ignore the still small switch. You remember mTOR? mTOR must be flipped on. But what's interesting is mTOR then uses other proteins to do the heavy lifting. Proteins like MyoD and myogenin will actually do the hard work of building muscle. Creatine will also activate those. So you can see that this formula is wonderful because you check many boxes simultaneously regarding muscle health. Let me end this quick discussion by also conveying to you the added benefits you enjoy beyond muscle health in terms of your mental clarity. Here's a research article that shows just one dose of creatine, yes, will help your muscle, but it also gives you greater cognitive performance, better mental clarity, and helps with your sleep. Creatine is an excellent fuel source for your neurons, while at the same time decreasing inflammation in your nervous system. I've got a few minutes left and I want to share with you some brand new science. Dr. Benjamin Bickman and myself work at the same university, and we have a very large lab full of anxious students doing research. I really hope they're doing research right now while I'm here. But this is some new and exciting science that we've uncovered recently. In this case, this is preclinical data focused on the effects of stronghold. There's an acute phase, and what that means is we gave individuals just one dose of stronghold and then looked to see what happens. And then there's a chronic phase. That's where we gave individuals 4 weeks of daily stronghold and then evaluated the results. Let's look at the short term first. In the short term study, remember, just one dose of stronghold was enough to activate mTOR almost 5 times as high compared to non-stronghold use. You'll remember, mTOR is the switch. It's like the switch in the side of the room that turns the lights on. You've got to turn that on first before everything lights up. The same is true for muscle. You've got to have mTOR working first, then muscle growth will occur. We saw 5-fold increase. If you see such an increase in just one dose, can you imagine what it would be like if you used this product regularly? That's what the question was as we entertained a chronic approach. In the chronic results, remember, these are individuals that had 4 weeks of daily stronghold. Yes, their mTOR was working well, but we saw some very interesting body composition changes. In this case, we saw that these individuals had more muscle mass. That made sense. We expected that. Because again, if you turn on mTOR and you use the machinery in the cell, you'll get more muscle. That was very exciting. But let me tell you about the compositional changes we also saw. I think you're going to enjoy this. In addition to growing more muscle, these individuals also had less fat after 4 weeks. Now, this is a very important discovery. I'm really hoping that you'll see the benefits that this product can do or bring about. Here's a research study that can add some context. This study was performed in Tokyo at the Gerontology Research Center in Tokyo, where they looked at older Japanese adults. 日本の方がおられますか? 今。いますか? よかったです. These individuals, you'll note, are very informed as far as how their bodies are behaving. In this case, you'll see the title of this article is called Sarcopenic Obesity. When people get older, they have a tendency to have less muscle mass and more fat. And that is an equation that is not healthy. We don't want that. We want it to go in the other direction. So if the common, older, advanced individual has less muscle and more fat, what these data show is that Stronghold may be one of the best tools around to flip the script. Instead of having less muscle and more fat, we may over time realize our goal of increasing our muscle mass and decreasing our obesity. This really is a way to master your muscle and realize the benefits that are waiting for you in its use. Let me just conclude by saying that Stronghold is a wonderful tool at your disposal that can bring about some marvelous benefits. This is an exciting time for you in Asia. There are many people that are already seeing wonderful benefits with this product, but now it's your turn. It's your turn to take this message far and wide. Share it with your friends, because I promise you, these data and science by others support the idea that this can be a wonderful product as we age. I promise you, if you do that, you'll help the world master their muscle. Thank you very much, everybody. It was great to see you. Have an enjoyable, wonderful event.